plenty of politics going on because I suppose the cost cap is what everybody's talking about this weekend, and it's not the sexiest of subjects, funnily enough, but the FIA still haven't really clarified exactly what's going on at Red Bull. And Jack, it's just causing everybody to fill in the blanks, isn't it, themselves? And are they going to get a penalty? If so, what will it be? And we seem to be stuck in a vortex of nothingness.
Yeah, well, it's just waiting for the decision, really, isn't it? I think that's basically what it comes down to. The FIA have said that Red Bull breached the cost cap in a minor way, and now we're waiting for the penalty to be announced, fundamentally. So yeah, everyone's having a little guess. Everybody's hearing whispers, or maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But until we know, then we don't know.
You're absolutely right. And Andrew Benson, the FIA.
Okay, that's 40 seconds to green. Neutral. As expected.
Track. They were also looking at a few other items, points, flags, weather. Can you give us a very brief summary of the findings, please?
Well, they basically, Jenny, admitted that they made a mistake in putting the recovery vehicle out on track when they did. They said in hindsight that shouldn't have happened. That was after, people will remember, all the drivers were unanimous in condemning that decision. There was a couple of other things going on. It reminded the drivers of their responsibility to not go too quickly after Pierre Gasly did, in the FIA's estimation. They've said they're going to review the points system after the confusion at the end of the Japanese Grand Prix, when everybody thought the point system said something that it didn't actually say and wasn't intended to say. And that's it in a nutshell. Those are the important things. One final point is about Pirelli's tyres, wet tyres particularly. They are being looked at after, 12 years now, Jolien, of people not being happy with the extreme wet Pirelli tyre. They still aren't happy, and the FIA and Pirelli are talking about that.
Cars heading out on track. One final point is that Niels Wittich will be the race director for the remaining races this season. They will not rotate anymore. And as I say that, Jack, we've got cars out and about.
Certainly have. Beautiful day in Austin, 29 degrees. The air temperature, track temperature up at 38.5, and Stroll, Gasly, Vettel, Tsunoda, Giovinazzi, Norris, Ocon, Sainz, Schwartzman and Hamilton all straight out onto the circuit, and already a decent amount of crowd in the grandstand. What time is it? It's 2 o'clock, just gone 2 o'clock here, so good commitment from Brad Pitt to be turning up for FP1.
Yeah, I thought that's what we should have started with.
Yeah.
Pits in the pits for FP1.
Oh.
I think we should be clear about why he's here. There was a big meeting this morning between Brad Pitt and a Hollywood director who's putting together...
OK for GX3. Turn 7 loud and clear. OK for GX3.
Movie, and Lewis Hamilton's also been involved with that movie. He's been mentioning a couple of times in the last few weeks that he's been over to Hollywood 2 or 3 times recently to meet with Brad Pitt and the director to talk about that movie and make sure it's as authentic as it can be, because I think, as Lewis will be the first to admit, not many racing films are that convincing for people who know about racing.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what comes of that, actually. It's very difficult to make a racing film real racing, isn't it? I think, for me, Grand Prix was the only one that's really... And that was because they literally filmed real race cars racing and crashing. Here's Pierre Gasly's radio.
Don't worry, it smells like barbecue in the car.
Gasly's saying it smells like barbecue in the car. I mean...
Very bad upshift. When you come back, it's normal. We'll fix it after this one.
So Friday.
I have not been discussing long run with Brad Pitt, no, sorry. I know it's disappointing for you. We can do it ourselves, Joey, although people need to be aware that long run corner won't exist in second practice later on today, because the entire session is being devoted to a Pirelli tyre test.
Every time I'm here, there's no long run corner these days. What's happened?
Well, if you do 2 races a year, then the chances are it's not going to happen. Hashtag BBC F1, of course, if you want to get in touch. Just on there, while the cars are on outlaps and stuff, we'll cover off that FIA report thing, because overall I thought it just seemed remarkably fair and accurate. Basically, it was, yeah, we made a mistake sending him out in the wet. Gazzo was driving a bit quick, but in his defence, the lap time delta's a bit messed up because he drove so slowly with no front wing. His safety car delta was a bit out of whack and was actually, you know, far too high, so that made him go too quickly. So that was all a bit of a... So there were just lots of contributing factors, and they shouldn't have sent the truck out, the recovery vehicles out when they did, and there we go, a bit of a mistake from FIA. Maybe Gasly was driving too quickly, and that kind of seems accurate.
Yeah, that was the logic that everyone, I think, could see, basically, after when the dust had settled on it. You could see why it happened, but it was a mistake that everyone could see, and the drivers were very unhappy with. And so the conclusion is the obvious one, really. You don't want to see, in soaking wet conditions with poor visibility and limited grip, a recovery vehicle literally on the circuit. It's an obvious thing. I mean, drivers were rightly annoyed about it.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things that was said yesterday was by Fernando Alonso, who said that he never saw the recovery vehicle. Not because he didn't go...
And Alex, if possible, get clear air to Alonso ahead. You can pull over to the side.
Scary thing, and people were highlighting Gasly because he was going the quickest, but he was on the full wet tyre with visibility. There were other drivers that had no visibility on an intermediate tyre that was prone to aquaplaning. It was a really sketchy time.
And here's the thing, do you think drivers even knew that there'd been a crash there? Because when Sainz went off in the back, some of those further back might have not known Sainz had even shunted there, because of the visibility.
Yeah, many wouldn't. Yeah. Many wouldn't. Hamilton was so close to hitting him. Gasly picked up the advertising board, didn't he? Wouldn't have seen that coming at all. Visibility in those conditions is so bad.
Jenny?
Yeah, just on the whole race director and having one permanent race director now for the last 4 races, I feel like that's what the drivers have been wanting for a very long time, and they've got their wish now. But do we think that this is now a permanent thing with just one race director for all 24 races next season?
We don't know that yet, Jenny, but it does appear to be heading in that direction. As you say correctly, the drivers have been saying for a while that the alternation of race directors wasn't really working. I mean, this report has come out quickly, and that's, you know, effective of the FIA to get that dealt with. But, you know, we should remember the backdrop. This is a year in which there has been many instances of situations where the drivers and the teams and even Formula One themselves have not been happy with the way the FIA are running the sport. And actually that continues into the budget cap situation that you briefly mentioned earlier. People are a little bit flummoxed as to why the penalty hasn't been announced. There is a process, and that process has moved on a step this weekend with the FIA saying to Red Bull, this is what our offer is. We say it's called an accepted breach agreement. Basically, it would involve Red Bull admitting guilt in return.
Lots of vibration on initial peak into turn 13.
They decided that a team was in breach of the financial regulations. Took a very long time. And that topic of the budget cap has very much dominated the conversations this weekend. Many of the teams, most of the teams, if not all of the teams that aren't Red Bull and AlphaTauri, very unhappy with Red Bull. Red Bull pushing back, and then someone's crashed.
Yeah,
someone's crashed.
I think it's Giovinazzi just trying to get out of the barriers in the Haas. Yellow flag is out there, and it is Antonio Giovinazzi who has put it in the barriers. He's trying to drive out of the Tech Pro as we speak, but he looks like he's pretty well stuck in there. A red flag is out. He's trying to pull away, but that is not ideal for Antonio Giovinazzi. It's at turn 13 that he's gone off, and he's almost managed to pull it out of the wall, but he has not, and in not a great look that for Giovinazzi.
Well, I thought you were a bit harsh on the top of the show, saying it wasn't that interesting to you, Giovinazzi, in practice, because he's actually fighting for a seat for next year. And
I stuck, I don't know why.
Yeah, copy that. Yeah, copy that.
So he's managed to get out of the wall now, as Giovinazzi, and make his way back around. But yeah, in a season where the main criticism of Schumacher has been the it's not at turn 12, is it? No, it's much earlier on in the S's. So that's where he's gone off in the S's. We're about to see what happened, but in a season where the main criticism of Schumacher has been the amount of damage and crashes that he's had, it's tricky that Giovinazzi, the rear end just drifting away from him as he came. And I don't think I've ever seen anyone go in the wall there.
No, through turns 5 and 6, the left into the right, and the rear just snaps away out of nowhere. Really, it's not on the edge; it just suddenly goes over the edge. And that was Giovinazzi's second flying lap that he was just starting. He's done one flying lap. There's 1.3 seconds down on Schumacher. Then he was starting a second one, trying to find his feet in a car that he's not completely comfortable with, and he...
I think the right rear may have some damage.
But that's really just not good for Giovinazzi, who is in this fight for the Haas seat next year, alongside Schumacher, who is very much tipped to leave the team, and Nico Hülkenberg as a steady pair of hands.
I think the right rear may have some damage.
Yeah, it probably will have a little bit. We'll see how much damage he has.
He hit the barrier hard as well. The Tech Pro is quite forgiving as barriers go, and he's hit it with the right front, which seems to be still pointing in the right direction, and he's bringing the car back to the pits. But it was a fair whack. He's actually really lucky to drive that back to the pits. Front wing is damaged, but that's an easy fix. But it's just not a good starting point, is it, for a team that they want to get the experienced driver in, potentially because Mick, whilst he's had some pace, has been a little bit accident prone, and then your potential replacement crashes on lap 2 in the car.
And Schumacher hasn't really had an accident in a while, has he? He has seemed to kind of mainly clear that up.
He had a big one in Japan after the checker flag in FP1.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't in the race, but it was a really unnecessary crash for Schumacher. Apart from that, he hasn't, but he's just tarnished slightly by his 2 big whacks earlier on in Saudi and Monaco. But his performance has been okay, and Magnussen's been saying the same. You know, Mick's tough to beat, so he'll be in the garage right now, seeing Giovinazzi being wheeled back in and thinking, okay, this is great for me.
Jenny.
Yeah, I was speaking to him yesterday, actually, and he was, for the first time, I felt relatively defensive about his position at Haas and what he has to try and do and achieve. And I did feel a little bit sorry for him. And I think that crash in Japan was such a howler, such a mistake to make. And I think he's also got some very vocal bosses who are, it just feels like there's a huge amount of pressure on him. And will he keep his seat? Should he keep his seat? I can't see the people around that are being touted like Hülkenberg. You know, I just don't get it. So for me, I find it curious, and the fact that they're saying, oh, Mick Schumacher's just too expensive for our team. Well, now Giovinazzi's too expensive for the team as well. That team are getting bad. Just as well they've got a new sponsor. They're going to need it.
For me, I think Hülkenberg next season would be picking you up more points than Schumacher, is my sort of personal belief. But I also don't think that... I think Schumacher's done enough for me to warrant another year, because Hülkenberg is not your sort of long-term future, and okay, maybe Schumacher's not the long-term future at Haas, but as much as I rate Hülkenberg, I think he's 36 now, potentially, so, and obviously you've got Alonso and Hamilton still cracking on and doing great in their late 30s, early 40s, but to me, Hülkenberg is it's a bit of a nothing. I would happily see Haas stick with Schumacher, I think, because I don't think there's that much in the olden days, and I think I said this a couple of weeks ago, if there was some Piastri on the sidelines still, or a Norris on the sidelines, or a Russell on the sidelines, and Schumacher's keeping a seat, you'd be a bit frustrated. But actually, in the situation it is now, I would give Schumacher another year.
I agree with you on, I think Hülkenberg is probably the better driver. I would have question marks on, is he going to come back and be really motivated at this stage in his career? For someone that's driven in a lot of good midfield teams, Haas will be, I think, the least well-funded team that he'll have driven for in Formula 1. Okay, they've got a new title sponsor for next year, and maybe that'll help and be a bit more enticing. But he'll be coming back as a sort of stopgap, won't he, for a year or two, maybe to bank some points if he's really hungry for it. But he hasn't raced, apart from some super sub appearances, for a couple of seasons. If he's motivated for it and really wants to work hard with the team and knuckle down, I think he'll probably score more points than Mick in the next season or two. It'll be my 2 former teammates going together at Haas,
yeah.
Magnussen and Hülkenberg.
I think if we look at the Constructors' Championship standings, that gives you an explanation as to why they look like they're heading in this direction of going for Hülkenberg rather than Schumacher. Hasse tied for 8th place with AlphaTauri on 34 points, and they're 11 points behind Aston Martin, who are only 7 points behind Alfa Romeo in 6th. Let's say there's $10 million between each one of those positions in the Constructors' Championship. You know, if you had Hülkenberg in the team, would you be scoring 11 more points, or even potentially a bit more than that? Obviously, it's difficult for us to score points anyway. Every single point they can score is important for them. Money is tight for them, even with a new sponsor, which they announced.
Just think the commercial benefits, and so it's great. The thing for Mick though, when you look at just the standings, it doesn't look great for him. He's behind Magnussen.
And reminder, wind, high intensity, tailwind turn 1.
It's straight in the bank. If you take that out as one great drive from Magnussen,
Well, then you have to take out Schumacher 6th, surely.
well, I think because it's the first race as well. If you let's say then you have 17 more races. Schumacher first one in a competitive car as well. Okay, Magnussen was back, but basically in the last 17 races there's been very little to choose between them.
Yeah.
Just the first one that Magnussen banked the best result of their season, and it really does skew the picture, I think, overall of what's actually been pretty close, the fight between those two drivers.
Apologies for no sync. 44 minutes and 13, 12, 11, 10 seconds left on the clock. Max Verstappen has just done the fastest first sector of anyone. Lap times wise, Esteban Ocon is quickest on a 1 minute 38.8, 7 tenths quicker than Fernando Alonso. They're both on the medium.
Yeah, push next lap, I don't know, massive real luck.
Copy, we see a little bit of rear locking, but doesn't look too scary there.
Yeah, I just lost the rear completely, so...
Copy that, yeah, clear.
Takes him into the quick left of turn 19, and then the 20th corner on the circuit, the 90-degree left, out across the line, and Verstappen does a 1 minute 38.2, which on the soft tyre is half a second quicker than Esteban Ocon has managed. Jenny?
Yeah, and just down at McLaren, actually, and we know we've got these 5 drivers who are in this session. Okay, Giovinazzi, scrub him name off the list, I suppose, for Haas, but I'm really quite excited by some of the other drivers that are taking to this session, and especially down at McLaren, where Daniel Ricciardo sits out this session, and Alex Palou is in, IndyCar champion from 2021, and an exciting talent. I mean, he's done tests with the team, but this is his first time.
I'm already losing rear grip.
Copy that. So let's try to cool as much as possible the rear tires.
Yeah, sorry.
Gets a try out in front of these adoring fans who will be delighted if we get an American driver in the championship. So a big weekend, I think, for kind of American drivers and American series drivers.
Yeah, and I should have actually pointed out that with Robert Schwartzman in at Ferrari, it is Charles Leclerc who is missing this session. So that's a bit of an interesting one, that it is Leclerc who's missing out as opposed to Sainz. Here's Logan Sargent's radio.
I'm already losing rear grip.
Copy that.
So he is out on the hard tyres after 5 laps, and he's losing rear grip. Jenny?
Worth also mentioning that Charles Leclerc, we're expecting him to pick up a grid penalty this weekend for a maybe new power unit.
I'm already losing rear grip.
Copy that.
It's out one session anyway, because that's the rules, as Alex Palou just gets ready to head back out on track. That's the noise in the background, and Brad Pitt watches on at the back of the garage to see to see Alex take to the track again.
I tell you what, if you want a storyline for Brad Pitt's new thing, then Alex Palou's contract saga would be quite a fun one. Won the championship with Chip Ganassi Racing last season, and then didn't particularly ingratiate himself with the team when he kind of signed for McLaren, despite already having a contract with Ganassi, and that all sort of kicked off. And after a strong start to the season, with 3 podiums in the first 4 races, kind of dropped away a little bit before really dominating the final race of the season at Laguna Seca. Alex.
Checo, any stand-up corners we can help you with?
Turn 1 seems to be quite difficult, mainly with the rear. Getting back on power over the bump. It seems to be bumping quite a bit.
And leave Chip Ganassi, but I think he is staying at Ganassi next year. I think that's how it all ended up forming in the end. So yeah, very interesting stuff from Palou. He did do some European racing, finished 7th in Formula 3, or the FIA Formula 3 European Championship in 2018. Did a couple of seasons of GP3, finished 10th, won the Yas Marina sprint race back in 2015 with Campos Racing. So not exactly a stellar junior career for Alex Palou, but he certainly turned up and did the job in IndyCar last season, and again at times this season too. So interesting.
It's a strange one, really, because he was a Spanish driver, came up through the ranks in Europe, and look, it was always a solid driver, but never looked like he was potentially Formula 1 material. Went away to America, and they rate him really highly. And
did a bit of Japan first, finished 3rd in Japanese F3, which is Super Formula,
which they rate him highly as well in Japan, and it's their tough series to go into against names that we don't necessarily recognise, but those guys are very, very good at what they do in Japan, and it's tougher. Van Dorn went over there, Gasly went over there, and we're trying to fight for a championship, but it's not easy for those guys. And so Palou, he's carved out a great career in America. Champion of IndyCar last year, rated really highly, and now suddenly getting a chance in an FP1 session, and what an opportunity for him.
Jenny?
Yeah, just a quick update on Giovinazzi, and the session is clearly over for him in the Haas. The clutch...
Looks like we were early on the brakes. I do appreciate that was your first time approaching that sector.
That's a shocker for Giovinazzi, and he has done in the past FP1s with them as well. Way back before he was racing with Alfa Romeo, he did some FP1s, and I remember him crashing the car in Hungary in an FP1 outing for Haas. This is the one thing that Günther Steiner doesn't want from a signing in the second seat alongside Magnussen.
And he was a little bit crashy in his F1 time as well. Do you remember Spa? That Spa crash at Pouhon, like on the last lap, and that felt like it was going to be the end of his career, but he managed to keep it going.
Yeah, he's got a ton of speed. He did quite well against Kimi Räikkönen. Question mark, how good was Kimi Räikkönen age 40? I think he's just butchered his chance of being in that car, and it looked like it was fairly 50-50, him or Hülkenberg. A bit of a toss-up for.
I can't say we've got a load of traffic.
Copy.
I just cannot see that Giovinazzi getting a chance in FP1 at this crucial stage in negotiations, crashing it on his second lap, and the car's not repairable in the next 50 minutes. I cannot see that they're going to sign him.
Palou finished 3rd in that 2019 Super Formula Championship. Nick Cassidy took the win, with Naoki Yamamoto finishing 2nd and Palou 3rd. But Palou didn't score any points in the last race in Suzuka, and so he must have been right with Cassidy going into the final round of the championship. But must admit, didn't watch it. Don't watch enough Super Formula, I don't. Fernando Alonso has just had a bit of traffic coming around the hairpin at turn 1. Both Red Bulls he's had to go around the outside of. Verstappen's lap time is still the quickest on that 1:38.272. And Ocon is 2nd fastest, and 3rd fastest is Fernando Alonso, who was looking very Larry coming through the S's. Had a bit of a slide and a correction in the quickest part of the circuit. There was a brief yellow flag earlier on. Don't know who it was for, but someone out there had a moment. But I haven't seen a replay of that. Verstappen is improving on this lap on the soft tyres. Robert Schwartzman is coming down to the hairpin that takes him out onto the back straight. And Schwartzman's one who has always felt very nearly exciting. You know, he's always been there or thereabouts in the mix. Won Formula 3 did Schwartzman in 2019, and then second in Formula 2 last year, but never feels like anyone's really ever bigging him up, despite quite a successful junior career.
I like Schwartzman. I think he's good. He's quite a fiery young driver as well. I think there was a feeling that he had to go and win Formula 2 last season because he was very good as a rookie. Having
fourth in his rookie season.
Yeah, having won Formula 3 and...
Gotta figure out something for the brakes.
So turn 11.
Let me know.
Turn 11, we're braking.
Let me know if someone's coming fast. I can't see.
Yeah, we'll let you know. Max is in turn 2. Pushing is 14 behind.
But yeah, it's just dangerous in that section. But
like the FP1 rule, that young drivers get a chance now a couple of times a year. It's nice, and the teams are clearly, the majority of them have saved up these chances for the end of the season when there's little to play for in the bigger picture, fewer upgrades coming on cars, so it's a good run out for some of these younger drivers.
Verstappen has jumped up his speed to a 1 minute 37.4, 8 tenths quicker than Perez, who's now second. Vettel has jumped into third on a 1 minute 38.4, only a tenth slower than Perez, all on the soft tyre. Sainz fifth quickest in the Ferrari, 9 tenths of a second away, but I would suggest we haven't really seen a huge amount of representative running just yet. Isn't it? So we'll see how bogged down in cost cap we get. If you do want a big old cost cap chat, download the Checker Flag podcast from BBC Sounds. But Bernard says, why weren't the penalties defined with the spending limit? Making up a penalty retrospectively is ridiculous. Andrew Benson, your thoughts?
So the facts are that the rules are the way they are because those were the rules that the teams were prepared to accept when the budget cap came in. It was a long, drawn-out process to get this cap introduced, and certain things were required by the teams. One of them was confidentiality, and that's the reason why the amount of the breach that Red Bull have done has not been made public, because the rules say it has to be confidential at this point. The process by which the penalty is applied, this idea of accepting, you know, an agreement, it's not the FIA make they make it clear to the team what penalty they want.
Yeah, we need more rear in general. Need to exit.
Copy it. On a box for flap adjust, or are you happy to go for another one?
Happy to go for another one.
Understood.
If I'm not improving in the first sector, I box. So I take another cooldown because the tires are quite hot.
Understood.
Goes to adjudication panel. It's all because this is the way the teams wanted it, and F1 and the FIA wanted the budget cap, so certain compromises needed to be introduced as a result.
Interesting. And we'll see if we get any more on the budget cap over the course of the weekend. Just had a thing come up on screen which I love. Théo Pourchaire has two pets, two golden retrievers called Peaky and Shelby. So he is obviously a huge Peaky Blinders fan.
Yeah, exactly.
That's phenomenal. Have you watched Peaky Blinders, Andrew? Oh, he's just shaking his head. I love it when he's in this mood and just doesn't bother even picking up the microphone to answer.
I have nothing of merit to say about a show I've never watched.
Why haven't you watched Peaky Blinders?
I don't know. I know it's supposed to be really good.
Do you like television?
Yes.
You should give it a watch.
Yeah, but there's only so many hours in the day, you know. You have to pick and choose. Don't judge me, everyone.
What did you do on your flight over here?
I didn't watch Peaky Blinders. I did watch some movies.
You should
I
have
had a
watched
sleep,
Peaky Blinders. Okay.
which served me well for Wednesday night, Jack, as you may remember. I was in reasonable form on Wednesday.
You're on great form. Went to bed early, but you're on great form.
Not as good form as last night, but...
No. Benson's in great form at the moment. Probably one of the people in best form in Formula 1 at the moment, Andrew Benson. 32 minutes and 3 seconds on the clock. Palou has just jumped up into 12th place. He's done a 39.9, and it's only 3 tenths slower than Lando Norris, and they're on the same tyres. So that feels pretty reasonable from Alex Palou at the moment.
Okay, Pierre, do you need one more lap? Sainz starting a time lap on the line.
yeah, I would like if possible.
Yeah, we can afford it. Sainz braking, turn 1, pushing.
Just my turn 11 is so bad. Like the grip is so bad.
Yeah, we go from new to old tarmac, so we'll need to have a look what the others are doing as well.
My only race here,
Oh, yeah.
2016.
Do you know every result off the top of your head just like that?
I confess, I
mean, it's
had to
only a
look this up
season and
yesterday. I
2/3.
thought it was 13, felt right, but it was, yeah, I had to double check that one. It was a fairly bog standard race, that one.
As opposed to all your others.
Well, they were exceptional, yeah.
31 minutes and 5 seconds to go. Jenny Gow.
Oh, just out of Mercedes. Listening to you guys is hilarious. Like, sometimes I forget that I'm part of this because it's just listening to you is so funny. Anyway, Mercedes have brought an update this weekend. It's their final really big upgrade, I suppose.
Yeah, I try to open 9 as much as I can, but I'm just sliding. Try it.
Okay, you can consider coming a bit.
Rear wing, front wing, floor, all with tweaks to them. They're running them at different times on the different cars. So Russell will run, Hamilton will run some. And they'll do some comparisons to try and work out if they're heading in the right direction or not. And they've got huge sensors and grills on Hamilton's car just behind the roll hoop area, which they're now just taking off.